If you've ever spent any time driving down a country road, or really just traveling through rural areas, you probably know the exact silhouette we're talking about today.
Oh, absolutely. You see it all the time.
Right, it's the jackal buzzard.
Mhm.
You see them perched on a weathered fence post, or maybe perfectly balanced at the very top of a telephone pole.
Just looking completely static.
Exactly, like an ornament. From a distance, it looks like they are just waiting around, serving as these living ornaments on the landscape.
Yeah, they really do look like they're just lounging.
But today's source material, these incredibly detailed field logs, prove that this perceived resting state is actually a highly calculated energetic reset.
A completely necessary reset. Yeah.
It is the quiet preparation for and recovery from bouts of extreme physical trauma.
So welcome to the deep dive. We are so glad you are joining us today.
It's a critical distinction to make right out of the gate, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because when you are moving past these birds at highway speeds, your brain just registers a still image.
Right, you're doing 60 miles an hour. Exactly. You process this static shape on a post and you assume inactivity. But what we are looking at today are the compiled notes of an observer who doesn't just drive past.
Which is the coolest part of this whole source.
It really is. This is someone who lives in a highly populated buzzard territory, watching them daily, year after
Yeah.
year.
Talk about dedication.
Seriously. And that kind of longitudinal, stationary observation peels back the illusion. You stop seeing a bird on a post and you start seeing an athlete strictly managing a brutal caloric economy.
A caloric economy. I love that phrasing because that is the central theme of what we are unpacking today.
It dictates everything they do.
It does. And the mission of this deep dive is to look past that surface level illusion of the stationary hunter. We want to break down the extraordinary physics and the hidden dramas happening right under our noses.
Because there's so much drama there if you actually pay attention.
So according to the field logs, when these jackal buzzards do finally leave those fence posts for a standard flight, they are incredibly deliberate.
Highly deliberate.
The observer notes that a normal flight pattern consists of these really slow glides or very steady, methodical wing beats.
Which aligns perfectly with the biological imperative of a large bird of prey. Aerodynamic efficiency is literally everything to them.
Right.
When they are employing those slow glides, they're utilizing thermal currents. They're essentially letting the atmosphere do the heavy lifting for them.
It's like they're just catching a ride.
Exactly. And the steady wing beats are about maintaining momentum with minimal muscular drag. They are not out there darting erratically or burning excess fuel for no reason.
It kind of reminds me of a daily commute.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You know, like you're just getting from point A to point B. You're in the right lane, cruising at a steady speed. You're not revving the engine or doing donuts in the intersection.
Hopefully not.
Right. Every movement in that baseline state is just mathematically calibrated to conserve energy. For the moment, it is absolutely necessary to burn it.
Conserve, conserve, conserve,
Yeah.
because they know they're going to need it.
And that sets up this baseline of extreme efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
But the logs document a maneuver that completely shatters that baseline.
It throws the commute right out the window.
Totally. The observer recently documented several jackal buzzards abandoning that efficient glide entirely.
Yeah, this observation was fascinating.
Instead, they were high up in the sky, performing what is essentially a kite maneuver.
Hovering.
Just suspending themselves in midair, descending slowly, and methodically scanning the ground below.
Which is wild when you think about the physics involved.
Right, because my first thought is, what is the strategic advantage of burning so much energy to stay perfectly still in the air?
Well, it requires a massive conceptual shift in how we think about a bird interacting with the wind. Because when a buzzard glides, like we just talked about, it is slipping through the air currents.
Taking the path of least resistance.
Exactly. But when it hovers like a kite, it is actively fighting the wind.
It has to stay in one place.
Right. It is positioning its body at the precise angle of attack against an oncoming headwind to generate enough lift to counteract gravity, but without generating the thrust that would push it forward.
That sounds exhausting.
The muscular load required to do that is astronomically high.
Yeah.
You're talking about constant microscopic adjustments of the primary feathers and the tail just to maintain a static position in a shifting medium.
So they are just draining their energy reserves at an incredible rate to hold that vantage point.
Redlining the engine.
And the target they are scanning for makes the stakes even higher. Because the logs specify they are looking for Cape Dune Mole-rats.
Which are not easy targets.
Not at all. Specifically, they are awaiting for the exact moment one of these mole rats dares to poke its head out of the complex network of burrow holes dotting the landscape.
You really have to visualize the geometry of this hunt to understand the tension here.
Okay, paint the picture for us.
You have this subterranean mammal that spends practically its whole life protected by the earth. It occasionally breaks the surface for, what, a fraction of a second? It's just a tiny peek.
Right, so the strike window is infinitesimal.
Blink and you miss it.
Exactly. If the buzzard is gliding on its normal commute, by the time it spots the exposed mole rat, its forward momentum might carry it entirely out of an optimal strike trajectory.
It would fly right past it before it could dive.
Exactly. So by hovering, the buzzard trades its energy reserves for vertical precision.
It's like a helicopter locking onto a target.
That is exactly it. It is locking its crosshairs directly over the burrow, descending slowly to shorten the distance, so that when the mole rat appears, the bird is already in the optimal position for a purely vertical drop.
And the observer actually managed to capture video of this hovering display.
Which is incredible in itself.
Yeah. You can really sense the immense patience required, both from the person holding the camera and the bird fighting the wind. Because when that strike window opens, when the buzzard actually spots the mole rat, the entire tempo of the event just flips.
It's an instant explosion of kinetic energy. The logs describe a sudden, dramatic, rapid dive. It just drops out of the sky to seize the prey.
No more hovering, just pure gravity and thrust.
And interestingly, the observer notes that after a successful strike, the buzzard often lands right there on the ground to consume the meal rather than taking it up to a safer perch.
Now, that decision to stay on the ground highlights a really fascinating behavioral compromise.
Because they're exposed, right?
Highly vulnerable. A raptor on the ground has restricted vision, and it is entirely exposed to terrestrial predators or even opportunistic scavengers who want to steal the kill.
So instinctually, they should want to get back up to the fence post.
The instinct should absolutely be to secure the prey and immediately return to elevation.
So why do they stay?
If a buzzard chooses to remain on the ground to eat, it suggests the caloric cost of that kite maneuver, followed by the kinetic explosion of the dive, has temporarily redlined its system.
It's just too exhausted to fly.
Exactly. It is prioritizing immediate caloric intake over defensive positioning because it literally doesn't have the gas left to take off again.
That vulnerability really underscores the brutal reality of the hunt. And I think that transitions perfectly into what is arguably the most spectacular and frankly brutal anecdote from these field logs.
Oh, this is the story. This is the one that really puts it all into perspective.
It really does. Because this isn't just about a bird choosing to eat on the ground. It is about a bird being physically trapped there.
A captive to its own success.
Yes. So the observer was driving along one of their familiar local routes and witnessed an adult jackal buzzard drop suddenly from the sky.
And a sudden sheer drop usually indicates a high-confidence strike. The bird isn't hedging its bets. It is fully committing to the velocity of the dive.
And it connected. The bird secured a Cape Dune Mole-rat in its talons. But the logs emphasize a very crucial detail here.
The size.
Yes, this is a large Cape Dune Mole-rat. The bird got its talons in, the strike was a total success, but the aftermath was just a biomechanical nightmare.
That's a great way to put it.
The observer watched the bird try to take off with its prize, and it became immediately clear that the sheer mass of this mole rat was entirely overwhelming the buzzard's capacity to generate lift.
This is where the sheer physics of survival just become totally unforgiving.
Yeah, the math just doesn't work out.
We naturally focus on the lethal precision of the talons or the aerodynamic speed of the dive. We love the dramatic stuff.
Sure, the apex predator moment.
Right. But a successful strike introduces a massive payload problem.
You catch it, now you have to carry it.
Exactly. To achieve flight, the buzzard's wings must generate enough upward force to exceed the combined mass of its own body and the payload.
Which is heavy.
Very heavy. When a bird attempts to lift a subterranean mammal that might rival a significant percentage of its own body weight, that power-to-weight ratio completely collapses.
So the bird is grounded.
It's completely stuck.
And what followed, according to the logs, was this grueling test of endurance.
A marathon.
The logs describe the buzzard embarking on a relay race just to move the prey. It would struggle into the air, fly maybe 30 to 40 meters, and then be forced to land on the ground to rest.
Let's really frame that distance for a second.
Yeah, 30 to 40 meters.
That is barely a fraction of a football field. It is a desperately short distance for an animal built to command the sky.
It's like it barely getting off the ground before it crashes back down.
It is the equivalent of a human attempting to sprint while carrying a heavy piece of furniture.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like trying to run with a couch.
Exactly. The initial explosive energy required to get off the ground with that payload rapidly depletes the oxygen in the bird's muscles,
Lactic acid just flooding the system.
flooding it. Within seconds of achieving flight, the muscles reach absolute failure, forcing a premature landing.
So it hits the ground, and it has to recover.
The heart rate is likely spiking. It has to hyperventilate to clear the lactic acid, and then, fully exposed in the brush, it has to brace itself and initiate that explosive takeoff all over again.
And the observer watched this bird do this over a distance of a few hundred meters.
Think about how many stops that is.
Just this agonizing multi-stop marathon of 30-meter deadlift wind sprints.
It's punishing.
It was doing all of this just to gain enough height and cover enough distance to drag this heavy meal across the road right in front of the observer's car.
And the psychological stress of that crossing has to be immense.
Because it's a road.
Right. A road represents open, exposed terrain completely devoid of any cover.
The worst place you could be.
For a raptor, being grounded on a road with a payload it can barely carry is the highest possible threat level.
It can't dodge, it can't hide.
It cannot maneuver, it cannot escape, and it is completely tethered to this massive weight. The sheer willpower to refuse to drop the prey, to just endure muscle failure over and over again for hundreds of meters.
It's wild.
It is a testament to how valuable that dense caloric package actually is.
They need it so badly they're willing to risk everything for it.
Every single time.
Well, the payoff for the observer being there, just sitting quietly in the car, was extraordinary. The logs mentioned that the lighting was perfect.
I can just imagine the photos.
You really can picture it. That golden angular light catching the dust as this powerful bird struggles across the tarmac. The observer managed to capture excellent photographs of this entire exhausting ordeal.
And then those photographs are essentially freezing a moment of supreme physical trauma.
They really give context to the resting state we talked about at the beginning.
Absolutely. They provide the necessary context for that stationary silhouette. When you realize that acquiring a single meal might require hundreds of meters of repeated maximum capacity deadlifts, the concept of the resting state takes on a completely different weight.
It's not lazy at all.
Not even a little bit. The bird sitting motionless on the telephone pole isn't idling. It is recovering from a marathon, or it's banking the necessary reserves to endure the next one.
And when you realize the sheer physical trauma required to secure and transport a large meal like that, the behavioral notes regarding the younger birds in the area suddenly make a lot more sense.
Oh, the juveniles. Yes.
Because this observer hasn't just logged isolated hunting events. Over the past few years, they have documented the generational cycles.
Which is such a privilege to witness.
Right. They've been watching specific chicks grow into fledglings, then juveniles, and eventually full adults.
That is the distinct advantage of observing a single, highly populated area over years. You stop seeing a monolithic species and you start recognizing distinct life stages and behavioral shifts.
You see them grow up.
You get to observe the friction of the learning curve as these birds transition from dependency to self-sufficiency.
And there is a highly specific example of that friction in the logs that is incredibly telling.
I love this observation.
The observer notes a specific juvenile jackal buzzard hanging around an area near Rondevlei.
Okay.
And this particular juvenile fledged many weeks ago.
So it's not a baby anymore.
No, it has its feathers, it is out of the nest, it can fly. But the logs describe it persistently, almost constantly, calling to its parents for food.
It is a dynamic that translates across so many species.
It's so relatable.
The juvenile is physically capable of flight. It has the physiological equipment necessary to hunt, yet it refuses to initiate the behavior.
It just wants mom and dad to bring dinner.
It is relying entirely on auditory demands to force the adults to continue provisioning.
You look at that behavior on the surface, and it seems almost comical. It's the fully capable kid refusing to move out of the basement and demanding free food delivery.
Right, it's easy to project our human frustrations onto it.
Totally. But when you overlay that persistent screaming for food with the brutal 400-meter relay race we just analyzed, you really have to wonder about the math there.
Yes. Is it just a reluctance to leave the nest, or is the juvenile calculating the sheer cost of independence?
That is exactly the right question to ask.
The transition from being a recipient of calories to a procurer of calories is the most dangerous phase of a raptor's life.
Because if they fail, they starve.
Exactly. The juvenile possesses the instinct to strike, but it lacks the muscular conditioning and the tactical experience to execute a hunt efficiently.
It hasn't built up the tolerance for the lactic acid yet.
Right. If independence means having to fight the wind in a hovering kite maneuver, successfully time a vertical drop on a subterranean target, and then endure a massive physical breakdown trying to carry a heavy mole rat across open terrain,
Yeah, you'd stay home too.
the evolutionary logic is crystal clear. Delay that reality for as long as possible. Let the fully conditioned adults absorb the physical trauma of the hunt.
That paints such a cohesive picture of survival. Every detail from these field logs connects to the next one.
It's all part of the same brutal economy.
From the initial assumption of a lazy bird on a fence post to the reality of the kite maneuver, we see an animal constantly managing a high wire active energy expenditure.
Managing it down to the decimal point.
We explored the physics of a catch so heavy it grounds the hunter, forcing it into a deeply vulnerable marathon just to secure its prize.
A literal deadlift sprint across a road.
And we see how the brutal demands of that adult reality shape the stubborn, noisy dependence of the juvenile near Rondevlei.
It reinforces the profound value of sustained observation.
It really does.
The natural world is incredibly adept at masking its labor. When we just glance at an environment out the window of a car, we miss the underlying mechanics entirely.
We just see the ornament on the post.
Exactly. By looking closely, day after day, year after year, as this observer did, we gain access to the raw physics and the exhausting calculations these animals navigate every single day.
It completely rewrites the script of the casual country drive. And I really want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building entirely on the physics of the struggle we dissected.
The physics of the carry.
Yes. Think about this. If securing a highly valuable large meal literally grounds a powerful bird of prey, exposing it to terrestrial threats, and forcing it into an agonizing multi-stop marathon just to cross a road.
Which is terrifying for the bird.
Truly, how much of an animal's daily survival strategy is dictated not by what they are capable of catching, but by what they are physically capable of carrying away?
It fundamentally challenges our entire definition of apex capability.
It really reframes the whole predator-prey dynamic.
The true ceiling of a predator might just be its payload limit.
It is a phenomenal concept to consider the next time you spot a silhouette against the sky. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great journey.
We hope you walk away with a totally new perspective on the invisible weight of survival happening just outside your window.